The Galactic Council chamber was a place that was never quiet. It was a giant, shining hall, floating in the middle of space, built to show power and control. Thousands of alien delegates sat in curved rows, their strange bodies glowing under the soft white lights. Giant banners of every species hung from the tall walls, showing unity and strength. It was a place where the galaxy made decisions, where no one dared to be silent. But this time something was different. The chair that belonged to humanity was empty. No one from Earth had come, not a single ship, not even a message. At first, no one paid attention. They laughed, they talked, they whispered to each other. The humans were always late, they said. They were always stubborn. For years, the Council had pushed Earth around, taking what they wanted, expecting obedience. The humans had argued, complained, but always showed up in the end. This time they did not. The silver chair in the front row remained cold and untouched. A long shadow stretched across it, as if something dark and heavy hung over the room. Slowly, the whispers died. Even the air seemed to change, growing heavy and still. The Supreme Speaker, a tall creature with 4 golden eyes and a voice like breaking glass, tapped the glowing platform to bring the chamber to order. The echo bounced through the hall. "We will begin," the speaker said, trying to sound calm. But even their voice shook a little. The humans had missed meetings before, but never like this. Never without warning. From the second row, a short alien with blue skin and sharp teeth leaned forward. "Perhaps they finally accepted their place," it said with a sneer. "Humans talk big, but they always bow." A few delegates laughed. It was a weak laugh, forced, like they were trying to convince themselves nothing was wrong. But not everyone laughed. An older alien with silver horns sat silently, his hands folded tight. He had seen many wars. He had seen what silence meant. "No," he whispered softly. "This is not bowing. This is something else." But no one listened to him. Above them, the massive holodisplay showed the names of every race attending the meeting. Next to each name was a glowing mark. Every race except Earth. Next to Earth, the mark flickered between grey and black as if the system itself didn't know what to do. Normally, the system would flash yellow for a late arrival. It had never flashed black before. It was a signal the system used only when a race disconnected completely. The speaker tapped the platform again. "Earth will answer," they said, forcing a smile. "They have no choice. They rely on us." But deep inside, even they knew something was wrong. Everyone in the chamber felt it, but no one wanted to say it. Suddenly, the soft sound of static filled the speakers. Every delegate turned their eyes to the large screen. The system was trying to connect to Earth's diplomatic channel. White noise filled the air. Then done nothing. No voice, no picture. Just the word "no signal." The speaker cleared their throat. "A technical error," they said quickly. "We will proceed without them." But their long golden fingers tapped the desk nervously. They could feel something breathing at the edge of the stars. In the upper gallery, observers from smaller planets began whispering to each other. Some were afraid. Some were excited. "Maybe the humans finally gave up," one said. "Or maybe," another whispered, "they're preparing something." The words spread like cold smoke through the chamber. Preparing something. The Council had always believed Earth was weak. They had taken resources, ships, and rights from the humans for years. They laughed when humans protested. They ignored their warnings. But humans had a habit the Council always forgot. When they went quiet, it was never out of fear. It was because they were planning. The speaker noticed the unease. Their voice rose sharply. "Control yourselves. Earth is a small race. We are the Council." They would never dare. But the trembling in their voice betrayed their own fear. One delegate, a red-scaled creature from the core worlds, slammed its claw on the table. "This is not a joke," it growled. "The silence is a weapon. We have seen this before with other species. When the weak disappear, they return with teeth." Another delegate stood. "We should send a fleet to their system," they said. "Show them what happens when they disobey." But the old horned alien finally spoke louder, his voice calm and low like distant thunder. "You will not find them," he said. "Not the way you expect. Humanity has gone quiet before, and every time they return, someone bleeds." The chamber fell silent again. Even the youngest delegates could feel the weight of his words. The holoscreen still showed that black mark next to Earth's name. It looked like a wound in the glowing list. Outside the chamber, in the cold darkness of space, sensors along the Council's outer rim were already picking up faint movements. Small at first, invisible to most, but growing. The Council didn't see it yet. They didn't hear the low hum in the void. They didn't notice the way the stars seemed to disappear in certain corners of the galaxy. But soon they would. Inside the hall, the Supreme Speaker forced the session to continue. But no one was listening anymore. All eyes kept drifting to that single empty chair. It was just a chair, cold silver silent. But to every mind in the room, it was louder than a fleet of warships. It was a warning written in silence. And deep in their hearts, even those who hated Earth the most felt a strange chill. Something was coming. Something they could not control. Something they had built with their own arrogance. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for centuries. But for the first time in living memory, they were afraid of a chair that no one sat in. The tension that began in the council chamber did not fade when the meeting ended. It grew heavier, like smoke spreading through the corridors of their power. After centuries of control, the Galactic Council was used to fear coming from the weak. But now, for the first time, fear was growing inside their own walls. Earth's silence had wrapped itself around their minds like a cold chain. In the private war room, high above the main chamber, a group of elite council members gathered. The war room was made of black glass and steel, with walls showing live feeds from every major fleet and star system. The air inside was colder than the outside corridors. No reporters, no public eyes, only the ones who made real decisions. The Supreme Speaker stood in the center, his golden eyes flicking from one screen to another. "This is nothing," he said firmly. "A simple act of rebellion. Humanity will bend again. They always do." But even as he said it, his voice lacked weight. Across the room, Admiral Kor, a reptilian alien with a scar running down his jaw, leaned against the wall. He had fought in 5 wars, crushed 3 rebellions, and led the largest fleet in the galaxy. He did not speak much, but when he did, people listened. "They're not bending," he said quietly. "This isn't weakness. It's planning." A younger delegate with silver skin laughed nervously. "Planning what?" "They have trade ships, cargo haulers, and some old defense stations. Their fleets are nothing compared to ours." His laugh was thin, hollow. Admiral Kor turned his cold reptilian eyes toward him. "That's what they want us to think." Silence fell over the war room. Everyone knew the humans were stubborn. They had survived wars, blockades, and council pressure that would have broken most species. But they also knew something else. Humans didn't like to warn their enemies. They liked to surprise them. The Supreme Speaker slammed his hand against the glowing table. "Enough," he shouted. "We will not fear a species that crawled into the stars a few centuries ago. If they think they can test us, we will remind them who rules the galaxy." A tall insectoid delegate nodded. "We should send a patrol fleet to the Sol system, a strong one. Show them that silence has a cost." But Admiral Kor didn't move. He stared at the large star map projected in the air. A soft red light blinked on the edge of council-controlled space. "A fleet won't find them," he said slowly. "If they've gone quiet, they've already moved." The speaker frowned. "Moved where?" The Admiral's claw tapped the blinking red light. "Here," he said. "Or anywhere we can't see." Outside the war room, whispers were already spreading through the lower ranks. Council soldiers spoke in low voices about strange reports from the border sectors. A cargo ship had gone missing. Then another. Then a patrol. No distress calls. No wreckage. Just silence. In the corridors, guards kept glancing at the sky through the glass ceiling as if expecting something to appear. The feeling was growing everywhere. The Council had made too many enemies, but only one enemy had disappeared without a sound. The Speaker called an emergency Council vote. "We will send a warning to Earth. They will respond." But when the message was sent through the diplomatic network, the reply was the same: no signal. In the colonies near human space, alien traders reported strange movements. Human ships, but not the ones they knew. These ships were quiet, dark. They didn't broadcast IDs. They didn't dock. They just passed through like shadows. One trader whispered, "They didn't look like merchants. They looked like hunters." Meanwhile, in deep space, the Council's intelligence network tried to scan the human communication channels. What they found was terrifying. The channels were not empty, they were locked. Humans had sealed their entire communication grid. No signals went in. None came out. "They've cut themselves off," one officer said in shock. "They've built a wall around their systems." The speaker leaned over the table. "Why would they do that?" Admiral Core answered for everyone. "Because they don't want us to hear what's coming." Back in the chamber where it all began, the silver chair still sat empty. But now, it was not just a symbol of absence. It was a warning. A shadow had entered the galaxy, not with fire, not with noise, but with silence. Some delegates still told themselves that nothing would happen, that the humans would return like they always did. But in the deepest part of their minds, they all felt the same cold truth. They had pushed too far, and far away, beyond the stars they controlled, Earth was no longer listening. It was preparing. The darkness at the edges of the galaxy had always felt distant to the Galactic Council, like a faraway storm that would never reach their shining cities. But in the weeks after Earth went silent, that storm began to move closer. It started quietly, like whispers in the dark, like soft footsteps that no one could see but everyone could feel. In the observation stations near the outer rim, the night sky changed first. Patrol fleets sent out their regular reports, calm and routine. Then one night those reports simply stopped. A long-range outpost near the neutral sector sent one last broken transmission. 3 words, "Lights in shadow." After that, nothing. No response, no debris, no survivors. The Council military command brushed it off as a communication failure. They said the humans were too weak to cause real trouble. But Admiral Core was not convinced. He had seen this pattern before, not from humans, but from old wars when powerful enemies waited in the dark until the moment to strike. He sat alone in the war room, staring at the star map, watching small blinking dots representing fleets go dark, one after another. On the 3rd week, an entire convoy of Council supply ships vanished without a trace. The escorting destroyers were some of the best in the galaxy. No distress calls, no signals. The sector scanners showed nothing. It was as if the ships had been swallowed by space itself. When news reached the Council chamber, panic began to whisper through the rows of delegates. They argued loudly, each blaming the other. "Pirates!" one shouted. "Rebels!" another cried. But someone in the back whispered the word they all feared. "Humans!" The moment the word was spoken, the chamber fell quiet. The Supreme Speaker slammed the platform to silence the room. "No," he growled. "Humans are too weak for this. They cannot disappear entire fleets." But deep inside, even he didn't believe his own words. The timing, the silence, the growing darkness, it all pointed in one direction. Across the galaxy, smaller races began to withdraw their ships from human space. Traders stopped traveling near Sol. Colonies began closing ports at night. Old stories about Earth started to return. Stories of humans who survived endless wars. Stories of a species that smiled when cornered. Stories that ended with the same line, "If they go quiet, run." Then came the first true sign. A Council dreadnought, the pride of their core fleet, entered a quiet system on the rim to investigate one of the vanishings. The dreadnought was a floating fortress, 3 kilometers long, with thousands of soldiers and the most advanced technology the Council had. They expected pirates. They expected a quick cleanup. But within 2 hours of entering the system, every transmission ended. The Council sent 3 fleets to find out what happened. All they found was debris, not burned, not blasted. Clean cuts through thick armor, like something sharp and precise, had taken the ship apart piece by piece. No black box survived. No bodies were found. Just cold wreckage floating in silence. Back in the Council chamber, no one laughed anymore. Delegates whispered behind closed doors, their eyes wide and voices low. The speaker tried to keep order, but fear was leaking through the walls like water through cracks. "We need control," he shouted. "We are the Council. We rule the stars. But one voice rose from the shadows of the room. It was the old horned alien, the one who had warned them before. He stood slowly, his eyes dark. "You don't rule silence," he said, "and you don't rule them anymore." The words spread through the chamber like fire. Some delegates demanded war, others demanded peace. Some wanted to surrender before anything even started. But Admiral Kor watched the live reports without saying a word. In his gut, he knew what this was. Not a random attack, not an accident, a strategy. Humans didn't rush. They waited. And when they moved, they made sure no one heard them coming. In the border sectors, more fleets disappeared. Planets went dark. Even the Council's most advanced satellites picked up nothing. No heat signatures, no drive trails, no visible ships. Just empty silence, like something had erased entire star systems without making a sound. A quiet terror began to grow in every corner of the Council worlds. The fear wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It lived in the space between each word, in the silence between every alarm. The humans had not returned yet, but the galaxy could already feel their presence like cold air before a storm. And for the first time in centuries, the mighty Galactic Council realized something. They had never wanted to admit power meant nothing when your enemy was already inside the dark. The night sky above the Council worlds had always been bright with ships, stations, and glowing trade lanes. But one quiet evening, everything changed. The stars were still there, but something new moved between them. At first, the defense satellites didn't register anything. No engine signatures, no heat, no communication signals, just a shadow sliding through the void. Then came the first clear reading, an object the size of a battle fleet approaching without warning. Within minutes, hundreds more appeared. On the capital world, alarms began to echo through the defense command centers. Operators stared at the screens in disbelief. "They're inside our perimeter," one officer whispered, his voice trembling. The Supreme Speaker rushed into the command hall, surrounded by guards, demanding answers. "Whose fleet is that?" he barked. But no one could answer. The ships carried no flags, no signatures, nothing. Only one signal pulsed through every frequency, repeated again and again, in cold silence. Two simple words: "Humanity remembers." The speaker's golden eyes widened. His hands trembled slightly, but he tried to keep his voice firm. "That's impossible," he hissed. "They can't be here." But they were. The first visuals from deep space telescopes appeared on the main screen. The chamber went silent. Black warships filled the sky, their smooth hulls reflecting no light. They were nothing like the old human cargo haulers the Council remembered. These were sleek, quiet, and alive, with a blue glow pulsing through their armor like veins. Their shapes were sharp, built for speed and silence. They didn't form a neat formation like Council fleets. They drifted slowly, like hunters moving in the dark, confident and patient. In the Council military war room, Admiral Kor stood tall, but even he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "They've been hiding this," he said slowly. "All this time they were building this. Where?" A delegate shouted. "Where could they have built such a fleet without us noticing?" Kor didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone in the room knew the truth. The Council had grown arrogant. They thought they controlled every corner of the galaxy. They never looked beyond the shadows. Humans had always been underestimated, treated like a minor race, but they had been watching, learning, building. As the human fleet moved closer, the defense grid tried to scan them. The readings came back empty. No known weapons, no known engines. But the energy readings were higher than anything the Council had ever recorded. When the humans spoke, it wasn't through words. It was through the void itself. A low, humming frequency filled the entire system, shaking the satellites like a distant storm. "They're broadcasting without transmitting," one officer said in a shaking voice. "It's like the ships themselves are speaking." The speaker slammed his hand on the control table. "Activate the defense fleets. Show them who rules the stars." All over the capital system, the Council's proud warships rose from their docks. Thousands of ships lined up, engines burning bright, ready to defend their world. They expected a battle, but the humans did not move. Their fleet just hovered at the edge of the system, silent and calm, as if daring the council to fire first. Inside the council chamber, chaos began to grow. "We must negotiate," shouted one delegate. "We must attack now," shouted another. Fear was splitting the council apart. No one could agree, and every second the Black Fleet grew larger on the screens. Then something happened that none of them expected. One of the human ships stepped forward from the rest of the fleet, its hull opening like the eye of a storm. For a moment, the entire night sky lit up with blue light. Every alien in the chamber froze. It wasn't an attack. It was a display, a silent message, a warning. The Supreme Speaker whispered under his breath, "They're not here to talk." For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council faced an enemy that didn't beg, didn't threaten, didn't explain. Humanity didn't need to. The empty chair, the silent vanishings, the broken fleets. This was the answer. Admiral Kor stared at the growing blue light and spoke softly, but everyone heard him. "They're not asking for power. They're taking it." And above the capital, the Black Fleet drifted closer, covering the stars like a dark wave. The Council, once untouchable, finally understood they were no longer in control. Humanity had returned, not to speak, but to show the galaxy what silence had been hiding. The Galactic Council's fleets had never lost a war. Their warships stretched across the stars like a silver wall, strong and loud, built on centuries of domination. But that wall began to shake the moment the Black human fleet moved. It didn't rush forward like an angry army. It glided, silent and precise, like a blade sliding through water. The defense commanders barked orders through trembling voices, activating shields, loading plasma cannons, powering up entire battle stations. Bright red lights filled the command halls, warning sirens echoed across the capital system. But the human ships didn't slow down. High above the council world, thousands of alien ships formed massive formations, locking onto the intruders. Their targeting systems flashed green. "They're surrounded," one officer said with false confidence. "They can't escape." But Admiral Kor didn't answer. He stood at the edge of the war table, watching every silent move on the screen. He had studied war all his life, but he had never seen anything like this. No chatter, no panic, no formation shift. Just cold precision. "Fire," the Supreme Speaker ordered. The first wave of missiles and plasma tore through the void. Dozens of beams hit the lead human ships, but instead of exploding, the shots vanished like smoke in wind. Their shields didn't flare, their hulls didn't crack. It was as if the weapons passed through empty space. Confusion swept through the alien command bridges. They're not taking damage," a voice stammered over the radio. Then the human ships replied, not with words, not with warnings, but with action. A low humming filled every ship in the system. Alien pilots clutched their heads as the sound vibrated through their bones. And then, in a single flash, the first line of Council warships vanished. No explosions, no screams, just gone. Clean, silent, erased. The fleet that once made entire species kneel disappeared in seconds. Inside the war room, panic cracked through the once proud council leaders. "What is this?" one delegate screamed. "No weapon can do this." Admiral Kor's jaw clenched. "This is what silence builds," he muttered. The second wave of council ships tried to retreat, but human vessels moved like shadows, warping in and out of sensor range. Alien targeting systems spun wildly, unable to lock onto anything. It was like fighting ghosts. One by one, the Council's warships vanished into the dark, their proud engines silenced. The great wall of silver ships collapsed like dust in a storm. In the skies above the capital, the black human fleet drifted forward slowly, not rushing, not celebrating. It wasn't a battle for them. It was a message. Their formation tightened, and for the first time the entire planet saw their size. It wasn't a single fleet. It was a storm. On the surface, crowds gathered outside towers and domes, staring up at the dark shapes moving through the night sky. Their glow was calm but terrifying. This was not a loud conqueror with flags and banners. This was something colder, something unstoppable. Inside the council chamber, the Supreme Speaker slammed the table again and again, shouting commands no one followed anymore. The military feeds were silent. The admirals were silent. Even the defense grid had stopped responding. One delegate fell to their knees, whispering, "They're already inside. We've already lost." Admiral Kor raised his head slowly. He had seen this before in other wars, the moment when power shifts without a single word. The Council had ruled with strength, but humans had just taken that strength apart in minutes. "They didn't come to negotiate," he said quietly. "They came to end it." A massive blue pulse spread from the lead human ship, lighting up the entire sky. It wasn't a weapon, it was a warning. Every alien on the surface, every soldier in orbit, every leader in the chamber felt the message in their bones. The pulse carried no voice, but the meaning was clear. The war is over before it began. The Council had spent centuries teaching others to fear them. But now, standing under the shadow of a fleet that didn't even need to speak, they finally understood what real fear felt like. Above their capital, the human fleet stopped just outside orbital strike range. It didn't need to destroy the planet to win. Their silence was enough. The mighty Galactic Council had always believed the galaxy belonged to them. But in that quiet moment they realized it never did. Humanity had simply waited. And now they had returned to claim it. The council chamber had never been this quiet, not even during their bloodiest wars. The delegates, who once stood tall and proud, now sat frozen in their seats, their colors pale, their breathing shallow. The great walls of light that displayed their fleets and defenses showed only darkness now, empty screens where proud formations once glowed. The human fleet floated above their capital like a black storm, silent and calm, as if it already owned the stars. The Supreme Speaker stood at the center of the chamber, his golden eyes shaking, his hands pressed against the cold surface of the control table. For centuries, his people had ruled the galaxy with power and fear. But now, the one species they had mocked the most had arrived without firing a single warning shot, and everything he built was breaking apart like glass. "Open a channel," he whispered. "Now!" The technicians tried, but every system returned the same message. "Access denied." "Sir," one of them stammered, "they've taken control of our entire communication network." The speaker's throat tightened. "How?" No one answered. Then, without warning, the giant central doors of the chamber opened. Every alien turned their head. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hall, slow, steady, unhurried. A figure in a black uniform walked in, alone. No guards, no army, just one human. The sound of their boots striking the polished floor was louder than any alarm. The moment the figure appeared, every delegate stopped breathing. The human walked through the rows of trembling leaders, as if the room belonged to them. Their eyes were cold, calm, unreadable. They didn't rush. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The silence around them was more powerful than any words the council could ever say. The Supreme Speaker tried to keep his voice steady. "You dare step into this chamber alone," he said. But his words shook like a cracked bell. The human stopped at the center of the chamber, directly beneath the glowing emblem of the Galactic Council. For years, that emblem had represented dominance, but now it looked small behind them. The human raised their heads slowly, scanning the terrified faces around them. They didn't smile. They didn't frown. They simply existed, like a storm that didn't need thunder to be feared. "I want answers," the speaker barked, his fear twisting into anger. "Why are you here? Why have you attacked our fleets?" The human tilted their head slightly, then glanced up at the display above. With a flick of their wrist, the chamber's screens flickered to life, not with council symbols, but with human code. One by one, the council's military strongholds appeared on the screen. Then the feeds switched again, showing human fleets positioned across multiple systems. Not one fleet, dozens. The entire galaxy was surrounded. Gasps filled the room. One delegate stood, shouting, "This is a crime!" "You can't control the galaxy," the human finally spoke. Their voice was calm and quiet, but it carried through the chamber like a blade slicing the air. "We already do." The words hit harder than any weapon. The speaker stumbled back a step. His guards didn't move. No one did. You thought we were weak, the human continued. You took what was ours. You laughed while we bled. And while you mocked us, we learned. We built. We watched. They paused, letting their words sink into every trembling alien heart. And now, we've returned. The old horned alien, the only one who had warned the council, lowered his head. You didn't come to talk, he whispered. The human turned their gaze toward him. No, we came to end this. Around the chamber, the giant windows flickered as blue light from the human fleet illuminated the entire sky. The council capital, once the brightest world in the galaxy, now lay under the shadow of something far greater. The power they had boasted about for centuries was gone, not taken piece by piece, but crushed in silence. The speaker's voice broke as he tried to speak. What do you want? The humans stepped closer, the sound of their boots sharp against the floor. Not what you can give, what you can no longer take. A wave of panic rippled through the delegates. Some tried to argue, some begged, some stared in shock, but none of it mattered. The human didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't explain further. Their silence was heavier than any speech. Admiral Kor, standing in the shadows of the chamber, lowered his head slowly. He knew this moment. It was the end of an era. The Council's time of control was over, not with fire, not with diplomacy, but with a single species they underestimated too many times. Above the capital, the human fleet expanded its formation, stretching across the sky like a second night. Every citizen could see it now. Every leader could feel it. The Galactic Council, once feared by millions, trembled before a single figure who stood alone in their hall. And in that silence, the galaxy understood that humanity had already won. The human fleet now covered the capital world like a dark ocean, swallowing the light. Every building, every tower, every glowing line of the city below sat under the weight of silent ships above. No music, no speeches, no war drums. Just a deep, heavy quiet that crushed the air itself. The Council had built their empire with fear, but in this moment, they were the ones who feared inside the Council chamber. The delegates sat still, their faces pale, their hands gripping the edges of their desks. None of them dared to speak loudly anymore. Even the Supreme Speaker, who once shouted orders that shook entire star systems, stood frozen, staring at the human envoy like a cornered animal. The black uniformed figure hadn't moved since entering. They stood in the center of the chamber like a shadow carved from steel, every step they had taken still echoing in the minds of those who watched. Above the chamber, the main screen flickered again. This time it showed not just the human fleet above the capital, but fleets above dozens of council worlds. Human ships were everywhere, at border stations, at resource hubs, at military strongholds. Places the council thought were untouchable. A cold shiver spread through the room. They weren't dealing with a single surprise attack. They were facing a power that had already wrapped its hand around the galaxy's throat before anyone realized it. One delegate finally broke the silence, her voice shaking like cracked glass. Why are you doing this? She whispered. We can negotiate. We can share. The human envoy raised a single-gloved hand. She stopped talking immediately. No one dared to speak after that. The Supreme Speaker forced air into his lungs, trying to sound strong, but his voice was dry. You've made your point, he said. The Council can offer terms. The human cut him off with a single word. No, the word was quiet, but it was like a hammer striking stone. It carried power the Council could no longer challenge. The humans stepped forward slowly, their boots echoing through the silent chamber. You called us weak, they said, voice steady. You took our worlds. You took our people. You stripped everything we built and laughed while we begged for scraps. And while you were laughing, their gaze lifted to the massive projection of the fleets. We were building something you could never control. The Supreme Speaker tried to answer, but the words died in his throat. He knew this was not a battle they could talk their way out of. Not anymore, the human envoy spoke again. We are not here to rule your council, they said. We are here to end it. The chamber filled with quiet gasps. No one moved. No one dared. Outside, the black fleets began to shift slowly. Not to fire, not to strike, but to surround. Thousands of glowing blue lines formed in the sky, outlining a boundary around the entire capital system. It was a silent wall, stronger than any shield. One move from the Council, and their entire empire would vanish in less than a heartbeat. The old horned alien lowered his head, whispering to himself, "It's over." The Supreme Speaker fell into his seat. His power, his title, his control over the stars, it all meant nothing now. The council chamber, once a place of loud commands and arrogant speeches, had become a tomb of silence. The human envoy spoke one final time. "This galaxy will not belong to tyrants anymore. Cross this line, and your council will be a memory." Then they turned their back on the most powerful rulers in the galaxy and walked out of the chamber without looking back. No guards, no escort, no fear, and no one stopped them. As the great doors closed behind the human, the council sat in silence. Outside, the fleets didn't roar. They didn't fire. They just watched, waiting like predators who already knew their prey could not escape. That night, the galaxy changed without a single planet burning. No battle was declared. No treaty was signed. Power shifted with the weight of silence. The Galactic Council had ruled for centuries. But humanity had returned, and their silence was louder than war.